Hey folks, and welcome to the Pipnotic Symposium for the 17th of March 2020. Today we're going to have a look at some pairs and we're going to have a look at the S&P, but first of all let's run the headline scraper because this stuff's pretty important these days. San Francisco tells people stay home. Russia tests virus update. Australia prepares to scale up stimulus to save jobs, business. Amazon to hire 100,000 to help meet virus-related order spike. U.S. banks may be downgraded by Moody's on pandemic. Where do we have some good information? U.S. stock futures stay volatile after worst rout since 1987. Delta American in talks to borrow billions amid pandemic. See, this is interesting here because this may cause the market to rally that you can sell into, because obviously this stuff is not going away tomorrow even after they borrow, because people aren't going to buy. Essentially what they're doing in a situation like this is that they're borrowing money so that they don't have to shut down business because they don't have any money. And so they're borrowing money from the government or someone else, maybe a private investor, whoever, and that kind of keeps liquidity in the company big enough so that they can continue to do their daily operations. But when that liquidity dries up, they have to borrow more, and if they can't borrow more, then they have to shut down. And so this is just a good opportunity to see a potential rally in price that can be sold into. Okay, let's see here. Supply chain concerns spark rush orders on Canadian maple syrup. Funny Canada. So there are lots of headlines that could be paid attention to. This is really interesting, especially at a time like this, to pay attention to the headlines, because this is going to give us kind of the general sentiment of what's going on, what has happened, and this is important to do, especially at a time like this, before you sit down to do anything. Okay, and also yesterday, Macron in France, he said that people have to stay indoors, and if you're found outside or speaking with people in public spaces, then you'll be fined. And so, that's kind of crazy. It's almost like, I don't know, you can kind of compare this to a situation like Nazi Germany. It's like mass hysteria. I don't know what to think in a situation like this. It's confusing, because if you follow the mainstream media, everyone's scared to death. Okay, and so there's a lot of fear has been sent out into the environment, and this fear is very good because it can be used for control, and so someone's trying to control the people, and it's very, very effective. Okay, and so there's been talks in Denmark about forced vaccines against this, and so you can already see what's starting to happen now. There's some lobbying going on. They're trying to get people to force the vaccines, and so who's scoring a lot of money in a situation like this? Well, it's going to be the pharmaceutical companies, or the first pharmaceutical company that is able to find a vaccine or some kind of a short-term fix for this virus. But the problem also in a situation like this is that if a pharmaceutical company who in the United States lobbies 2 times as much as the gas and oil industry, okay, that's a lot, and so they can get things pushed through. So they can say we have a vaccine, but we don't want all the BS with the human trials and the testing, and so they cut the trials period and make it much shorter than it would otherwise be. Okay, and so that's risk. That's a huge risk. I'm not going to be giving myself or my children vaccines that have been pushed through the trials program. So this is, I think this can become very, very dangerous for people involved as well. So we know in a situation like this that pharmaceutical companies have a keen interest in selling vaccines. This mass hysteria is going to get people to feel like that the best solution is to give themselves and their families vaccines. And so you have to keep a cold head, and you have to focus on the facts and not the headlines. Okay, good. So let's have a look at the charts and see what's going on. We have a look here. This is the S&P 500, massive sell-off. This is an incredible sell-off, and then you ask yourself the question: well, where could we buy? Because this is a discount price for the S&P 500. Look, it went down almost about 1,000 points, over 1,000 points. That's staggering. Okay, so we have market structure, it's failed. We've moved below these lows here. So if we mark these areas off, so turning points in the market would be, and we saw bounces here, so it's telling us we have something in here. We have a parent and a child. So we'll just mark off this. This is the parent. Okay, and just above that we have the child. It was tested a couple of times. This one tested this child. So let's have a look at this one here. Okay, and there's not a lot of clarity on this time frame, so we'll have to look. But look, notice here that we have an accumulation candle. We have this candle here. Okay, and sorry, a little interruption by my youngest son there. So you have an area of demand, it moved higher, slingshots pull back. You can see it's like serious buying here. Now price is down here, and look where it stopped. It stopped here. And if you look at this, you can see that the close of this candle is above the range of this one, so that tells us that the slingshot was pulled back to here. Okay, let's delete that. And that's interesting because it's pretty close to where price went. Go on the daily, we're going to find some more clarity. Let's go like this. And if we look here, you can see that here we are. This candle closed above this one closed above this one, so we have a lot of kind of continuation patterns in here. But notice this is the really sharp push away, and then we had a huge rejection, and it came back to kind of the body of this candle here. So if we mark that one off, we're going to move on the daily. We're just going to mark it off like that. Okay, from the low of the slingshot. So here we have like an extreme kind of pullback, and we have a wick, so a really clear slingshot. It's pretty close to where price came to. So we're having a bit of a bounce there. I didn't get into this trade because I'm a little bit nervous about buying at the moment, but it's just to illustrate where these zones are located. And this is the beginning of the buy zone, and this is pretty much where price came to today. A few days ago, sorry, yesterday. And so now price is kind of meandering around. This is a nice area because price rallied. We came back and we left. This is the edge of the weekly buy zone that we saw. So in a situation like this where you're asking yourself, well, where's price going to go now? And so let's mark off the low like so. Make sure we know it's a daily area, and then we'll have a look. You can see that, I mean, price is pretty efficiently trading higher from here. What we have is we have some highs. The price tested, turned around, price finally came through, we turned around, and then price was pulled back to this level, and the move, sustained move above these highs here, originated from here. So this would be an interesting area to look at here. If we have a look at that and dissect it on the daily chart, I don't know if I have enough data. Man, MT4 brokers. I don't, so we'll have to do it macro style. If we have a look here, this is what we have. So price came down, we went up, slingshot was pulled back, and then we darted north. So this is an interesting area because this is where the sustained move higher originated from. Okay, that's interesting just here. Also notice that there's a lot of trading in this area, and so price has kind of cleared out liquidity at this area here, but we did have kind of fresh demand kind of injected into the market at roughly this price point. But also notice that down here we have quite a few things going on. We have this down here. We also have, I mean, this candle closed above this one, which is interesting. So we could go like this to the low of the body, to the low of the low here. Okay, we have that. We have some other buy zones in here. And these are micro buy zones because you can't see the details of them, and my broker doesn't have enough data. Okay, so price went up. We had another one that's closed above this one, so we have another buy zone. I'll just mark it off with a line here. We have another one here because this one managed to close above the accumulation. I like this one better because here we have an accumulation candle. Okay, so we have a couple of areas here, and this is one that I think is pretty interesting. Mark it off like that. We have accumulation. The beginning of the buy zone is, as mentioned, here, because this is where price pulled back to. And unfortunately, I can't go and have a look on the smaller time frame, but that's what we have to work with. So we have this is kind of interesting, probably have a bit of a bounce there, but I'm thinking this is the most interesting spot because this is kind of like the V, you know, the bottom of the point, the turning point in the market, and the big push kind of came from this area here. Okay, so a couple of areas to watch out for there. For selling, we have, look at the opposite side. It's going to remove all these areas here. You can see we need to find places where demand was consumed. And so we have, where do we have demand? Okay, so we have, okay, so we had this. This is supply, tested, removed by something in here. And this one's gone. Okay, so we have to find these areas that have consumed opposing areas. This was a nice area. You can see we had attempts to move lower, another one, and then we managed to move lower. And this is the origin because price came down, the slingshot was pulled back, and then we cut through. So it originated from this area, as we just marked off. It's kind of an ugly area, so we'll just do this. But it looks like that, okay? And now it's gone. Okay, so we had the child, which is just here, which was tested once, twice, had a nice bounce there, and now it's gone. So now we have to go down to the smaller time frame and find out what did it. See, this one's tested it. Yeah, this one's tested it. It's kind of messy. All these like it's rapid departures in price. It's pretty ugly. Okay, so if you focus at the move that moved through it, I mean this move went through it, so I can remove this, and then we can move up to here. We have something here. Okay, we had the gap. We closed here. We gapped down here. We went down. The slingshot came back to the edge, almost closed the gap, and then it departed. So there's something around this area there. And we also have this. We have a couple of areas here. We have this one here. We won't go into details about this one, but roughly at the 32.19. I don't know if price is going to get up there. We do have a couple of areas here that we could eyeball and look for price to have a bit of a bounce at in the relative near future if price manages to get up that high. You can see it's really ugly. It's gappy and illiquid. And on the daily chart, we can see that we had kind of sideways movement and price left. So we can do something like this on the daily chart. If we see what that looks like on the 4 hour, it looks like that. And looking at this, you can see the price, I mean, it's kind of focusing on this area here. So price kind of moved up, kind of moved sideways, and then we cut away, moved sideways, distributed, and then left. And price came to the bottoms, to the lows of this distribution, and then we kind of cut away. Okay, so it's tough to call what's going to happen. I like the way the price came down here, and there's black space since then, so price has not been back. So this would be an interesting area to sell at. But that's pretty high. That's pretty high. That's pretty far away from price. But that would be an interesting place to start to look to sell at some pretty high prices. So that's what we have there. Let's have a look at the currency strength. Now we need to grab our hands on the currency strength. GFX here. Put that on there. Remove this. Okay, now we can see what's going on. So what's going on? Well, here we have pretty clear, extreme deviations in price. We have the Australian dollar that has been really low and now it's starting to come back. You can see, let's see if that's begun to happen. On the 4 hour chart, it's already started to happen. If we have a look at the developments since the beginning of today, so the period open, we'll go to the minute. So, yes, and go to the minute chart, or the 5 minute. If I have enough data. Okay, so you can see here since the beginning of today. Oh, struggling to download data. So we can see here that on the daily we had the Australian dollar being very low, very weak, and it's starting to turn back. And since the open of today, you can see that it's beginning to be bought back. Okay, so we can expect temporarily this to begin to move higher intraday. I don't know how long this is going to take, but you can see here that we had this tested. Now it's gone. What area did it? This one did it here. So we've got something going on here. Price tested that, so we can expect price to wriggle lower. This has nothing to do with strength. This is just a Canadian dollar, Japanese yen. Okay, but that's what we can see here using the currency strength, which I think is a pretty remarkable tool. We can also do stuff like this where, so we go to the open of the week, and you can see the developments of the currencies since the open of the week. Today is, let's have a look. Today is Tuesday, and so you can see that here we had a very weak Australian dollar, and now it's starting to move higher. We have higher lows being formed in the Australian dollar, so we can expect the Australian dollar to begin to wriggle higher for a little while. The headlines regarding the Australian dollar are looking pretty negative, and so I think that you have to be a little bit careful with this because it could set in, depending on how long all these lockdowns occur for, but it's going to shut down economies all over the world, and it's going to happen pretty forcefully. And so I think using stops in a situation like this, or hedging or something, is very important, because price could leave and not return. And so you don't want to be caught with your trousers down and be exposed to a bear market when you're long for too much time. This would be devastating. Okay, and I know a lot of people have been in trouble for doing this, and just at the time being, it's just pretty good to take small losses instead of these massive losses that just empty your accounts. So please really be careful, because that's a pressing problem at the moment. Here we had the Canadian dollar. This is all the Saudi Russia oil wars. The price of oil got dumped. What affects the Canadian dollar? Oil. So you can see this. I mean, very, very strong push lower here. Okay, so this is very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. So we've only got 2 days data, but if we want to go in here and say, well, I want to see since the beginning of the month, which is pretty, so wrong one, beginning of the month. This is pretty interesting, because then we can see some serious data. See, this is nice. So we can see this divergence. You can see that, I mean, this month, since the beginning of the month, the euro and the yen have been bought, and the Swiss francs have been bought. And you mean, look at this, just like serious pushes away. So if you have a look at, for example, the Canadian dollar and the Japanese yen, which is this one, I mean, we've been moving south ever since these two crossed just here. Okay, so just around here we could see that there was a keen interest on this pair moving lower as a result. Okay, and you can see these are still high. We're seeing the Japanese yen begin to kind of to run out of steam and begin to revert to the mean. We have the American dollar picking up, which is a mystery to me. I don't know why the American dollar is picking up at the moment, because of the things that are happening. Negative rates in the zero rates in the Fed, the bond market liquidity drying up, serious blinking lamps saying that something bad is coming. And so we'll see what happens. I think the American dollar is going to take a hit in the relative recent future, so be careful. But I think we'll see it rally first, and this is what we're seeing. Yeah, so that's what we have there. But I think it's just a good idea to use the strength information to navigate this storm, because it's a storm indeed. And so have a look. Go to perhaps the period open. Look from the beginning of the month, and just keep your eye on that, because that's going to be some pretty interesting information. And then you'll be able to see what's on sale and what's being bought. Okay, and so this is just some pretty phenomenal information to have access to, and the software is presenting this to us very, very nicely. Good. Well, I'm going to leave it at that for the time being. If you have any questions, post them in the video below or leave them in the chat forum. Thanks for watching.